Oh, hi there. It is nice to meet you. Andrew, how you doing? Frederick.
Hi, Frederick.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you.
So I'd like to welcome you all here. I'm Andrew Heckler. I'm in the Department of Physics. And first, we'd like to start off with how we reach our students. So what are the kinds of things you do to learn more about your students?
It's important for me that the students tell me who they are and what they'd like. So I always hand out those good old-fashioned note cards at the beginning of the year, and I still ask students to write down, who are you? I have the roster provided by the university, but I also want to know the names that you prefer. I also want to know the pronouns that you prefer to be called by. And in that way, I'm making sure that I'm bringing you in.
Frederick, you said that you taught large courses. So how do you get to know your students in a large course?
So for the first 2 weeks, I have them tell me their major and their name and so on, some of their interests, the same that you do. I just have them kind of verbalize it. And I actually commit to memory all of the students' names. And so that's really sort of fun because then I can be like, well, hold on, we're talking about this unit on music in, in this particular movie and how it functions to elevate our emotions. Zach, you're a musician. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you compose your music?
But so Claire, so you said that you taught online.
Yeah.
So how do you get to know students online?
I use the Canvas Commons to try to look for some ideas for my online class. So that's like a place where you can go find activities that other professors have uploaded. With the online students, one thing you could do is meet with them in person. Students take the online classes for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're on campus and they're really busy with work. And so I often will meet with my online students in person, and that helps me get to know them better. And another way to connect with them is I send them I send them a video message for almost everything that they email me about, which helps them get to know me and my personality. My online class is so huge, it's really hard for me to get to know them all, but I have them do it in smaller groups. So we don't do any kind of large 200-person discussion in the online class. Everything is done in a smaller group of 10 to 20. And so that's trying to help them get to know each other as well.
Once you start to get to know your students, you start to know that there's differences among your students. So there's lots of kinds of differences. In a physics classroom, unfortunately right now, it's a lot of white males. There are some females. But I also started to notice that there are lots of differences and kind of intersectionalities with students. How did you come to learn it? What kinds of diversity and differences did you find in students, and how did that affect what you're doing in your classroom?
What is intersectionality? I think maybe we should define that.
Sure, it's really looking at the ways in which power and systems of power intersect with identity. So it means, in a very simple context, that who I am and all the complexity of who I am, my race, my gender, my class, my geographical origins, all of those things inform how I see the world, but they also inform the ways in which I'm treated in systems of power, right? So, in my teaching, that's ingrained so much in my field of women's gender and sexuality studies, that this idea that difference matters. But I think students haven't really fully processed that difference is also a part of how we learn and how we create our ideas, and how our ideas are informed by our experiences.
Very often what I find myself doing is you talked about geography. I tend to talk about class as a way for the students to find the common denominator, because in fact, most of our students come from working class, backgrounds, families. Then we can start talking about how certain kinds of bodies are more surveilled than others, and that, in this intersectional dynamic, if you are a brown person, the likelihood of you getting pulled over is X, Y, and Z, versus if you are light-skinned or white, etc. What does it mean? And that's what really gets them thinking about the degrees of how we as people are differently, right, boxed in, even though we have this common class position.
The diversity piece that I really tap into, I think, is socioeconomic diversity and being able to understand the differences in being able to afford to eat. There's lots of diversity of socioeconomics on this campus.
Sometimes we think that we can't have those kinds of powerful conversations in the online environment, but I think if we create the right kinds of active learning-based discussions online as well as in person, you can still have that kind of profound experience.
I love any exercise that allows students to take a walk in the shoes of others.
So, I mean, it sounds like one of the ways that inclusivity is helping is it's treating diversity and the differences of students as a resource, as an educational tool, as a resource that you can tap into to help achieve your instructional goals. I want to sort of ask, are there other sort of concrete examples? And I'll just give you one that I had. I realized that there's a lot of students, well, 30% of the students in my classroom lived off campus or worked full-time, just couldn't meet with other students to do their homework. And so what I did was I created this, like, I don't know, you could call it like a homework club or something like that, where we worked with students and found the right times where, they can't come at 8 p.m. at night, but they might be able to come in an hour adjacent to the class because they're already on campus or something like that. So that was this idea of me sort of seeing things more from the student's perspective and the student's eyes to change what I was doing in my classroom. So are there other examples that people have like that?
If this classroom space will permit, I put students in a circle, right? That we move into a circle or a semicircle. And why that is so important to me, it's really more difficult for me to say something really cruel about a particular group that you might represent if I have to look at you directly and say it, right? And that's another way, for me at least, that we bring or remind ourselves that we're dealing with other human beings in the classroom. You don't represent this idea or an ideology, that you're a human being. And it forces students to think a little bit.
We often bring patients in and families in to talk about their experiences with the healthcare system, whatever that might be, as well as other professionals. So when our students hear directly from a parent about their sick child, or they hear directly from another practitioner about how they came to be where they are in their working environment, those stories, you can't do better than that. Yeah, they're so powerful.
We tell stories the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, and even in our sleep. It is as much of our nature as the heart that beats in our chest. We are learning in my classes how these film or comics, other novels, etc., are stories that are distillations and reconstructions of a certain kind of reality that the author or creator wants to put back out in the world. Then the other part of this is to have these exercises where the students, like in the journaling or other moments, think about how that movie would have been made if it had been made from a different point of view, from the point of view of a woman, or from the point of view of someone working class, or someone Latinx or African American, et cetera. So that's one really important exercise, because they're inserting themselves and then they're reconstructing that story. Through storytelling, that's how we remember, and that's how we also develop empathy.
Sort of the general question is how do you set the tone, or what kind of tone or environment do you set in your classrooms?
People in the sciences tend to be all students are very conscious of grades, and they're very competitive to be able, and a lot of our programs are very competitive to get in. So at the very beginning of my courses, I try to have them leave that at the door and talk about, you're already here, you're in. We don't have to compete with one another anymore. We have to be able to work together to provide care for our patient. That puts them in a little bit different element than what they have experienced before. So that also sets them up for, I hope, to be able to be a successful team member.
In the academy, we talk a lot about safe spaces now, and in this current political environment, and given the types of courses that I teach, I can't assure students that it's going to be a completely safe space. And so I've shifted my language a bit to talk about recognizing each other fully in your humanity. We will operate with a state of grace. And we have a direct conversation. I find it's very relaxing and soothing for students, the idea that I'm not going to judge you if you get it wrong, and that now we've had a conversation with each other to make a social contract in the classroom, that we're not going to operate with judgment, we're going to operate with humanity.
So it sounds like there's giving permission and an allowance to be yourself and say what you think. But there also seems to be a kind of honesty. You're saying, let's take a step outside and let's be real people and be honest about what's happening here and how we want things to happen here.
Exactly. And so getting them to really reflect interpretively, critically in and through the text, also allowing for the other students to interface, even if they're coming from a drastically different position themselves.
And one way that I try to model that we're not perfect is by, and I guess it relates to perfectionism too, is by telling my own stories of when I mess up and then try to give them examples and so that they can be graceful with themselves when they're making those mistakes. I teach about these things and I still make comments that are, and not to just sit there in shame, but
Oh, sure. And just that's the whole, self-reflection, right? And getting students to engage in that practice of self-reflection makes for healthy, holistic human beings, which is a part of the enterprise that we're engaged in. I don't want to just teach you content, but I also hope that what you learn in the classroom space makes you a better human being.